Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and yes, the patch notes have dropped. They were one day delayed, as a lot of you pointed out to me, based on the sales that were in the shop and expiring. So I was wrong about yesterday's video. Apologies for that. I did overreact, but you know, mentally checked out in the morning these days. But let's jump into the patch notes and see what's going on. The update will be tonight. It will be tonight, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Pacific, which is 10 p.m. Eastern time. It'll obviously be Thursday in the morning into the afternoon, or early morning, I guess, for all of you guys in Europe and Asia. But yes, the update is coming tonight. Otherwise, for me, and I'll be live on YouTube, live streaming my reaction to it and checking out all of the new stuff. And there's actually a lot of new stuff. I was pleasantly surprised with these patch notes. So let's dive in. Spider-Man's getting his back to basics uniform as we predicted. He's getting some changes here. It doesn't seem like he's getting a ton of changes. He does get an interesting under 50% HP, 30% heal, ignore targeting for 5 seconds sort of passive. He retains his increased damage to supervillains. It's now 60%, and he does also have the ignore targeting effect with a 70% damage chance to penetrate, a 30% heal, and a 1.2 accumulation. So his fourth skill, Web Bomb, is doing a lot of work, a lot of heavy lifting here. He does have a 50% attack buff on street cleaning, and he does have a 100% proc that you can pass on Web Wrapper in addition to invincibility and a frenzy buff. So Spider-Man appears to be positioned for PvP. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to his tier 4, but that is what I see so far. Some people are speculating that his tier 4 is getting a new animation because the original skill is called Way of the Spider, and now they're changing it to Web Warrior Wrecker. We'll see. He's got a very iconic tier 3 skill, right, where Toby and Andrew pop out, but that was sort of for the movies, right? If this one's back to basics and this one's more about the comics, it makes sense for it to be different. So yeah, exciting to see the possibility of 6 new Spider-Man skills. Yes, 6. So that's very nice. And then the big confusion here, or the small confusion, I don't know, was it Arachnite or was it Spider-Man 2099 getting the uniform? Well, it's Arachnite using 2099's technology, and they listed over here in this sort of breakdown here, in controlling his new personality using the technologies of 2099. So yes, it's Arachnite getting the new uniform. He retains his superhero status. He gets, this is his first uniform, so these are all brand new effects. He gets chain hit, super armor, all defense. He gets an Infinity Warps ally leadership. So this is very interesting. They're sort of positioning the Infinity Warps as a team that you may want to use in content. If you use all 3 Infinity Warps allies, you'll get a 65% buff. It's sort of like Drax's leadership for combat types, but instead of increasing HP, it increases basic attack. So up to 65%, but this only applies to Infinity Warps allies. So you cannot use his leadership for anyone else in the game except for the Infinity Warps. So I wouldn't really call him a leadership necessarily. He's got a 40% HP and ignore dodge buff on his passive now, in addition to guaranteed dodge and crit. So very nice passives there. As far as his skills go, he actually has a lot of stuff for ABX. I noticed he has paralysis, he has silence. You know, he's got quite a few, well, 2 skills. Well, yeah, anyways, 2 is not bad. Not that you're going to need a speed hero male for ABX or ABL, but still, he's got a 90% damage proc. He's got frenzy buffs. He's got a heal. The only thing he's really missing is accumulation. He does not have accumulation. We'll see if it's on his 6th skill, his transcended skill. But yeah, he is getting, or no, he's a tier 3. No, he's a transcended. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting confused. Yeah. So he's a transcendent. So we'll see if he gets accumulation there. And then Chasm. So this is Spider-Man. This is Scarlet Spider. There's so many spiders, bro. He turns into a supervillain as we suspected. So this is the first, by the way, this is the first tier 3 speed villain. Male. Pretty crazy, right? Pretty crazy. You're like thinking, Electro, no, transcended. Gamora, no, transcended. Mystique, no, transcended. Green Goblin, oh, he's tier 2. So it's pretty wild that this is the very first time in 2023 that we're getting a speed villain who is tier 3. Very crazy. He gets chain hit, he gets ignore dodge, he gets damage reduction. Again, this is also the first time this character is getting a uniform, so this should be huge for them. He gets a 35% attack boost in addition to immunity to paralysis and stun. Kind of weird. I guess they're positioning him as a counter to some Spider characters because a lot of them have paralysis and stun. If you think Spider-Man, if you think Arachnite just now, and then of course Miles Morales. All of the Spider Sense heroes still getting their passive buff, so that's nice. They didn't really increase the numbers, but they did keep them there. I think they increased the skill damage. It might have not been 35 and 35 before the skill damage, bonus damage, but otherwise it's basically the same. So still a nice passive, harder to use in World Boss Legend content because he's a villain now, but we'll have to see. He still has the agility tag and the leadership tag, so you can use him in some situations side by side with Spidey and the other web heads. He does have an iframe ignore and counterattack skill. He also has remove active buff from target on horrific strike, so this is very PvP focused here. He also has an accumulation there. He has a 25% heal with a 60% damage proc that you can pass, minus 60 all defense down, invincibility, and a frenzy buff and fracture and webbing. So pretty interesting character, probably going to be positioned somewhere between a support for Spider-Verse characters and then a solid option in Alliance Battle or Alliance Conquest type situation. But yeah, let's keep going here. Scarlet Spider's getting his tier 3, does not have accumulation. I could not remember from the brief, read through that I did, the skimming that I did of these patch notes. So he does not have accumulation here for Scarlet Spider. He does have like a frenzy buff, and he's got invincibility and he's got penetration. His tier 3 does look really sick though. I have to say his tier 3 looks really sick. It starts off the same as Spider-Man's, where you see the clones come in, the other versions, but then he sort of has a mental break, and then they sort of glitch out, and then he just goes berserk. It's very cool, very glitchy, very futuristic, very clone-y. I really like it. I think it's one of the best skill animations they've done in quite a while. Very, very nice. Spider-Man's getting his tier 4. This is probably the most lackluster part of the patch notes. Yeah, so when you activate his striker skill, it applies a debuff to enemies that will web them for 2 seconds and remove their active buffs, including all debuffs. So yeah, this probably won't apply to World Boss Legend, so this is probably a PvP only part of his tier 4 skill. And then the other part of his tier 4 skill, very boring, I'm sorry, increases basic attack by 80%. I'm really tired of seeing this. They just gave this to Shadow Shell. Like half of the tier 4s are just another way of saying increase basic attack. Moon Knight has it, Thor has it to an extent. You know, there's so many tier 4s that just have increased basic attack. It's very boring. It's very boring. I'm not saying it's not effective. I'm just saying it's boring. And a lot of people were speculating, wow, that Spider-Man might get Black Widow's tier 4. Honestly, I would have rathered he get Black Widow's tier 4. Black Widow's tier 4 is more interesting than this one. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out, of course. But yeah, it does seem kind of boring right now. If it applies, if the remove active buff applies to World Boss Legends, now that's very interesting. That could be very interesting. That changes the story. Usually that doesn't happen. Usually that's not the case. So I'm not getting my hopes up for that. But who knows? I don't know. I don't know how badly they want to make Spider-Man popular. He already is very popular. But anyways, probably the low-key banger part of these patch notes, probably wasn't the best way to say that, but potentially the highlight of these patch notes, not only is Arachnite getting a Transcendence, but Iron Hammer, Ghost Panther, and Weapon Hex are all getting their potential Transcendence. So all 4 Infinity Warps characters. This is very, very cool. No accumulation here, but you do have 2 support characters in both Weapon Hex and Ghost Panther, both being able to transcend their potential, which means you can take them into World Boss Legend, which means you can take them into Dormammu GBR. This is huge, right? Ghost Panther is the best support for characters that deal fire damage. Any character that deals fire damage, he is the best support for them. So this is massive if you love using Jean Grey, if you love using other fire damage characters in content. He is the go-to passive for that. Very, very strong. And then while Weapon Hex's passive is not as well known, she does create this little bubble that gives you an auto heal. So this is very clutch for players who take a lot of damage and cannot survive, or have to rely on using strikers like Venom and Groot. You can substitute, if you have the open slot, right? If you're not using 2 supports already, you can substitute one of those slots on your team for Weapon Hex, and she can provide a lot of healing. So very strong aspect of the update. Web Tsunami also sounds really cool. Their Transcendent skill also looks really cool as well, because there's 4 of them, and they create this like box diamond attack pattern. And it's like green, it's like blue, red, orange. It looks really, really cool. I'm impressed with the animations, and I like the fact that they sort of like all warp in with the Weapon Hex, kind of whatever you call them, like teleport, like portals, whatever you want to call it. Anyways, it looks really cool. It just looks sick. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, it's a bummer. Yeah, it's a bummer that the other 3 are not getting uniforms, but they could get uniforms in the future. And at least 2 of them have really good passive effects to be used as supports. Ironhammer, not so much. He does have an okay-ish leadership, but you wouldn't transcend him for the leadership. But yeah, I still think this is quite nice. And then we get the new artifacts for everybody but Spidey, because he already has one. Honestly, these artifacts are pretty lame. I think they're uninspired. They're basically all copy-paste for the Infinity Warps characters. So it's just like their elemental damage, whether it's mind or fire, and then increased damage to supervillains. And then for Iron Hammer, it's lightning damage, and then increased damage to supervillains. And then for Arachnite, it's just a 15% chance to dodge all attacks, which is worse than Black Widow and Spider-Man's artifact. But then he also has the 10% ignore non-boss enemy damage decrease. So sort of positioning him for PvP. Scarlet Spider has the only team passive artifact. When debuffed, it applies to Spider Sense allies, so only the Spider characters. They'll have a up to 50% chance to have their debuffs removed, and then a 10% increase to basic attack. This is not very good, but for those mega whales who love Alliance Conquest, they're definitely going to want to pick this up because you can run this team without a dedicated debuff leadership. However, Jessica Drew exists, Spider-Woman, and she provides debuff immunity to all Spider-Sense allies. So I'm not really sure what leadership you would run instead of Scarlet Spider, because you're not going to run 3, like, what other Spider, like, okay, you're going to run Chasm, you're going to run Spider-Man, and then who else are you going to run that's really that much better than just using Jessica Drew's leadership and having a 100% chance to remove debuffs? Also, the remove debuff is 15 seconds with a 25-second cooldown. So it's not like it's, even if it triggers, it's only a 50% chance to trigger. But even if it triggers, it's not better than hers in terms of the amount of time that the debuff immunity is up and then the cooldown. It's the same, right? So you're still going to have a window where you get debuffed, and it's also a 50% chance, which is pretty bad. So yeah, I think his artifact is probably one of the worst in the game now, in my opinion. But the other 4 are okay. And then they added the Infinity Warps ability. So this is another funny surprise. Remember how I went on and on in the Ant-Man Quantumania video, how the new ability was going to be Quantum? Nope, it's Infinity Warps. So they're removing abilities from the Infinity Warps characters and changing it to the Infinity Warps tag. Kind of cool, kind of unnecessary, but that's okay. Anywho, those are the patch notes. I went through them pretty fast because I wanted to get this video out on time. Hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think. I'll be live tonight at 10 p.m. to check everything out, to grab all the uniforms, hopefully get Spider-Man to level 80 so we can test him out a little bit further, and then see where that leads us. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Smash the like button, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.